There's a new book out. It's called The Spurs Dynasty. Let's talk with the author.
You are Locked On Spurs, your daily San Antonio Spurs podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome back to Locked On Spurs right here on the Locked On NBA Network. I'm your host, Jeff Garcia, Spurs writer for Kings 5 San Antonio. Glad to have you back. Happy Hump Day, everybody. Hope everybody's having a great mid-work week. Just a few more days, and you're right there. Weekend is here. By the way, thanks for making Locked On Spurs your first listen each and every day, free and available wherever we get podcasts. So what are we talking about today? Well, we're going to have a returning guest / book author. Yes, Kyle Ledbetter, who wrote and did a podcast about the whole Spurs Kawhi Leonard saga. Well, he is back with a brand new book available today. Yes, today. It is called The Spurs Dynasty. He's going to talk about that and more, where you can find it, what's the book about, and much more. And then later on this episode of Locked On Spurs, we're going to have the head coach of Raptors Gaming of the NBA 2K League. He is Krishnan. He'll be joining us in just a few minutes. But let's go ahead and welcome our guest. He is back, everybody. Kyle Ledbetter. Kyle, welcome back to Locked On Spurs.
Thank you for having me on the show, Jeff. I am so excited to be back and really excited to talk about the Spurs because this has been a long time coming with our projects.
Yeah, I mean, you must wear a lot of hats. Not only you a book author, now a multiple book author. You also host the Take It Easy podcast. How's that going for you?
We're still going every single day, Monday through Friday. We're now over about 1,000 episodes over the past few years. I do some local radio here in Sacramento as well. So yeah, we like wearing different hats and creating a bunch of creative stuff.
Follow him on Twitter at sportsdsd_. Once again, he is Kyle Ledbetter. And for those who don't remember, Kyle was a guest a while back when he put out his kind of a podcast documentary about the Kawhi Leonard Spurs saga. It's still out. Is that correct, Kyle?
It is still out. You can find it. It's called The Fall of the Spurs Dynasty, available wherever you get podcasts, and you have all the links in your write-up for the show as well. So people can still find that documentary series. It's available wherever you get podcasts.
How was that received by the Spurs fan base, especially them, because, a lot of these fans went through it with the team. What was the reception? What was kind of the feedback you got from your work?
For the people who went out of their way to reach out to me, it was overwhelmingly, I guess you could say, positive of sorts. People recognized that I was coming from an interest of Kawhi Leonard. I didn't grow up a Spurs fan. I grew up in San Diego. Kawhi was our guy at San Diego State, and that was my entry point into the show. And a lot of people were interested, particularly in episode 4, when we really did a deep dive into what happened in 2018 with the injury situation and then the players only meeting and trips to New York and everything that happened there. That episode was really well received, and people thought that we did a fair job breaking that part down. And maybe they enjoyed that part more than maybe the 5th, which was Kawhi going to Toronto and obviously winning the championship.
Right. Yeah, it was a great, it is a great podcast documentary series. I actually was listening to it during my time at the workout gym. If I'm running the treadmill or something, that I'd pop that on and that would help, get through the grind. It was a really, really good show. But, before we get into the heart of your new book, The Spurs Dynasty, once again available February 21st. Now, it's available now, and we'll give you the links in a while. We'll get into the meat of that in just a few seconds. But did any of the Kawhi Leonard saga era kind of blend into the Spurs Dynasty book you have out?
Absolutely, because that was the story that I ultimately wanted to tell. The story that I was most interested in was how a superstar basketball player, one of the 25 greatest in the history of sport, in his prime, ends up sitting out an entire season and ultimately ending what was a 30-year run of success for the Spurs. I mean, the Spurs never won a playoff series after Kawhi Leonard left. Obviously, now they've missed the playoffs for a few years in a row, which had never happened in the 50-year history of the Spurs. That story was interesting. And really, Kawhi is the back end of this book and the Spurs dynasty story. It is what I call in the book the third superstar. When you go
Mm-hmm.
from David Robinson to Tim Duncan to Kawhi, I mean, it spans
Mm-hmm.
basically across 35 years of San Antonio basketball.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. It was, again, it's out right now. That is the Kawhi Leonard saga episode. Just go to his Twitter right now at sportsdsd_. He is Kyle Ledbetter. There he has a big old link tree. You can see all that stuff and how to check it out. Kyle, you mentioned, the Spurs and, their recent history of missing the playoffs. They've been kind of been in the bad end of history. Not only you mentioned the playoff drought, then there's, as of this recording, a 14-game losing streak, the longest in Spurs franchise history. For somebody looking from the outside in who isn't a Spurs fan, does this kind of make you scratch your head like, wow, has it come to this?
Now that I've done the research on the book, it makes a little bit more sense of how they got there. But if you would have told me 4 years ago when it was DeRozan and DeJounte Murray and LaMarcus Aldridge and Patty Mills was still there, I would have thought, yeah, they can build something competitive from this. If they hit on a couple of those draft picks like San Antonio always seemed to do, then they could theoretically turn this thing around. And to see it kind of stagnate and then now come to a place where they've really decided to bottom out and start over from scratch. I mean, you look at the DeRozan trade, the DeJounte Murray trade, most recently the Jakob Poeltl trade, Derek White. Obviously, they've decided to pivot the organization in a direction that in the 50 years of Spurs basketball, they've never decided to go down.
Yeah. Again, we're talking about the Kawhi Leonard podcast series you put out and the fall of the Spurs dynasty. It's interesting because you fast forward to the most recent Kawhi Leonard visit in San Antonio, and sure, there were some boos, but it wasn't as visceral anymore. And I think that expression, time heals all. Spurs fans, I think they haven't forgotten, but I think for the most part, they've moved on already. He'll still get the jeers whenever he comes to San Antonio, but it's not as visceral anymore. But that's expected. Time passes, Kyle, wounds get healed up. So I really thought, Kyle, that Kawhi, no matter what, every single game from now to eternity, Spurs fans would boo the what out of him. But that's cooled. That has cooled off a lot. Is that a little surprising for you, considering some of the feedback you got regarding that book you put out?
I think Spurs fans have moved on, but there's still that little bit of a tinge in their hearts are the ones who talk to me about, Uncle Dennis and Kawhi. We could have kept this going for another 5 to 10 years. And I think now that everyone's getting a little bit retrospective about, the Spurs dynasty and that 30 years of success, I think people can look back and be like, it stinks that it had to end the way it did. And at the end of the day, look at everything we accomplished with Kawhi and without. And I firmly believe that as time heals more wounds, they're going to retire Kawhi's jersey in San Antonio one of these days.
That is a very, very hot take. I would I would be a little surprised, but you never know. You never, ever know with this Spurs franchise, because they just might. Yeah. Once again, we're joined by Kyle Ledbetter. He is the author of an upcoming book that is out right now called The Spurs Dynasty. We're going to get into that right now, but just a quick reminder, make sure to go visit him on Twitter at sportsdsd_. There you'll see kind of a link tree, and it'll link you to the fall of the Spurs dynasty and Kawhi Leonard. And you can check it out, listen to it. It's a really, really good listen. But when we get back, we're going to dive into his latest book, The Spurs Dynasty, and much more right here on Locked On Spurs. But before we do that, I want to talk to you about Prize Picks. Look, you got to get Prize Picks, because Prize Picks makes daily fantasy very, very easy to do. What you got to do? So you pick 2 to 6 players. They go on to score more or less than their Prize Pick projection. You go up to 25 times your money on any entry. No competing against other people. It's just you versus the projections available. Prize Picks offers projections on any sport that you watch. This includes NBA, NFL, MLB, NHL, PGA, college football, boxing, MMA, cricket, and more. Entries can be made in 60 seconds or less. Yeah, it's that easy. Safe and fast withdrawals. Currently operational in over 30 states and in Canada. So what you got to do is download the Prize Picks app right now, or go to prizepicks.com to sign up to play daily fantasy sports. First-time users can get themselves a 100% instant deposit match up to $100 with promo code Locked On. You deposit $100, Prize Picks will give you 100. You deposit $50, Prize Picks gives you $50. So don't forget to enter promo code Locked On at sign up for an instant deposit match up to $100. We're back right here on Locked On Spurs with Kyle Ledbetter, the author of the Spurs Dynasty. The book is available right now, and that's what we're going to talk about. Kyle, what got you going? Why did you want to take this next step in documenting the Spurs franchise, particularly focusing on their dynasty years?
So when we made the Fall of the Spurs Dynasty, the 5-part documentary series, Spurs fans really came out in support of the show, thanks to your listeners and the people over at SB Nation and some very nice Spurs fans who found it from other ways. That podcast at one point was a top 75 show in the United States among basketball podcasts, which was beyond my wildest expectations. And so we took our scripts from that show, brought it to a publisher in San Antonio, their Watercress Press. They were super helpful in this entire process, and they helped us turn those scripts into a full book about the San Antonio Spurs and the years of David Robinson and leading into the Duncan years, the championships, all the way into the 2010s, and ultimately then leads us into the story we told in the documentary, which was the final years of Kawhi Leonard and everything that happened at the end.
What should Spurs fans expect when they dive into this? Is it just kind of stuff that they already know about? 5 titles in '99 and the Miami Heat series. What new perspective you're going to give Spurs fans in this book?
I hope to give them a perspective of the faces that they know. And I'm sure a lot of this information is going to be stuff that Spurs fans who really have followed the team for years know. But some of the stories I think are going to be uniquely different. We talk about Tim Duncan and his upbringing on the U.S. Virgin Islands. We talk about Popovich and, this archetypal 20th century success story where he uses sport and the military to achieve a level of economic, as a first generation immigrant, someone who ends up being the greatest basketball coach of all time. And there's so many different stories to tell, whether it's a history, psychology, even the stories of medical malpractice, potentially with Kawhi Leonard at the end. There's all sorts of interesting data points, and a book made it easier to take some of the direct quotes from people like Michael C. Wright, Ramona Shelburne, the people at the San Antonio Express News, and put it all together into a story. So I hope Spurs fans will learn something new about familiar faces.
No, I know this is your baby. You're going to love every aspect of this. But if you had to whittle it down to, the best thing that you would think that will really pique the Spurs fans' interest and why they should go out and get the book, what would that be?
That's a great question. Personally, the chapter that was most intriguing for me to write was the one about Greg Popovich, because I didn't know all that much about Greg Popovich coming into the book. I mean, obviously, I'm a younger person, shall we say. Some of these games which I'm writing about, I wasn't even born for, going back to the early David Robinson days.
Right.
And so I think the Greg Popovich story was something that I wasn't super familiar with. And there's just so many winding pieces to this, because he is what you would classify as a nerd within basketball. He doesn't fit the stereotypes of a basketball coach. He doesn't fit the stereotypes of really anything that you would point to with the greatest basketball coach ever. And Popovich has this unique life and this unique journey to becoming an NBA coach. I mean, he didn't get to have his first NBA head coaching job until I believe he was 48 years old. And it's this really interesting story that really, he's an easy character to like in this story or empathize with. And so I think Spurs fans will learn a lot about Greg Popovich.
You call it the Spurs Dynasty, and that is your latest book. But there's some that say it really wasn't a dynasty in the sense of they never won back-to-back. They never defended the title. It was spread out, so to speak, versus what many think is a dynasty being, the Lakers, Kobe, Shaq, 3 in a row, the Pistons, 2 in a row, the Bulls dynasty. Where do you land on that opinion of some sports media or fans?
Well, the subheader for the book is a historical account of the greatest dynasty in the history of North American pro sports. And the reason I articulate this is that the longevity of the San Antonio Spurs is unmatched in any sport, anywhere. Like the fact that they were able to go 30 consecutive seasons without ever being a bad organization. I mean, the one year that they get the lottery and win Tim Duncan, obviously, is a year they missed the playoffs. It's the only year in 30 years they missed the playoffs. They broke records in every team category. I mean, they had the most conference championship appearances. They had the most 50-win seasons. They were the only team that won 60 or more games in the 90s, the 2000s, and the 2010s. I believe in those 30 years, they had 7 60-win seasons, and the next closest team had 3. Like San Antonio, for what they did for 30 years, is without precedent in any North American professional sport.
How long is this book? How many chapters? Is this something that a Spurs fan can just have a deep dive in one shot? Or just how easy to digest is this?
So the book is written in such a way, hopefully, that my grandma, who doesn't know basketball, can understand the book. So we do have minute, like, hey, we have to explain some basic basketball stuff in here.
Sure.
But after that, it's about 230 pages. It took me about 3 or 4 sit downs to finish reading the whole book. So, I mean, it's a full length book. It has 15 chapters, each about 15 pages long. It goes from basically the first chapter starts at the Dallas Chaparrals years of the Spurs, and it goes all the way through the present. I mean, the last chapter or the last story we tell is Greg Popovich breaking the all-time wins record for a coach. Mm-hmm. So it goes all the way up through present day. And I think all of that context is required to properly understand what the 30 years of success looked like.
I'm going to do my little homage to the basketball gods right now. And I'm going to say, hopefully your next book is going to be about the Wembanyama era. Hopefully that happens, or the Scoot Henderson era. I am hoping that will happen for your next book. Once again, he is Kyle Ledbetter. He is the author of the new book that is out right now. It's called The Spurs Dynasty. Before I let you go, because I don't want to forget, we'll circle back to your book in just a few seconds. How can Spurs fans, or just NBA fans, just book fans, get this book right now?
So the book is available everywhere that you get books. We have a link tree that accesses all of the places you can get it, whether it's a Kindle ebook, whether it's Barnes and Noble, wherever it is that you get books, it is available. I got the link name Spurs 6th Championship on Linktree, which one of the chapters is called the Spurs 6th Championship. I bet you can guess what that chapter is about. And I really wanted to have that be the title. And so Spurs 6th Championship on Linktree is where you can go to find the book, or you can go to the Fall of the Spurs Dynasty podcast feed, and we're going to week by week create an audiobook experience for this story. If you want to listen to the introduction and chapter 1 of the book, which chapter 1 is the George Gervin, David Robinson years leading up to the 1997 draft lottery, then you can listen to that now. It's free. It's available on the Fall of the Spurs Dynasty. And the link to all of that stuff is at Spurs 6th Championship on Linktree.
Yeah. I do not know the extent of your book. Obviously, I don't have a copy of it right now. But, quick shout out to former owner Red McCombs. He passed away on Monday this week. And with that, basically everybody says in San Antonio, Kyle, without Red McCombs, there is no Spurs in San Antonio. They were about to leave or go the way of the St. Louis ABA team or the Kentucky team, just going to be done for. So he's the one who kept the Spurs in San Antonio. So rest in peace, Red McCombs. I didn't get a chance to say this yesterday on Locked On Spurs because it broke when we were recording it. And I figured what perfect way to pay the respects to him than having you, who has chronicled the Spurs dynasty not just once but twice with the fall of the dynasty, and it all began thanks to Red McCombs. So shout out, rest in peace, Red McCombs. But Kyle, I want to give you the last kind of push here to get fans to get your book. Is there something that you can say that's in the book that's really going to have Spurs fans opening their eyes?
I think so the book is 15 chapters long. We took about 4 chapters to go from 2018 until the end of 2019, with obviously Toronto winning the championship at the end of that story. I think those 4 chapters are really revealing because I haven't seen anywhere that I could find in research that has a clear timeline of events of what exactly went down in those 2 years where they go from after Kawhi gets Zaza Pachulia'd in that playoff game to 2 years later holding up the trophy in Toronto. I haven't seen a more concise breakdown of the factors that went into it and why they went their separate ways. I think that's kind of the meat and potatoes of the book, especially the second half of the book, after we get through the championships, after we get through the Duncan, Ginobili, Parker years. And I think that people will learn something new about what happened there. And again, I call it a historical account of the book. It's it's me telling one part of the story. It's not the definitive history of what happened in there, but I think we did a really good job putting together a timeline from 2017 to 2019.
And just to be clear one more time, they go to your Twitter, which is @sportsdsd_. There they can see a link to get the newest book, The Spurs Dynasty, correct?
That is correct. It's pinned at the top of my Twitter, sportsdsd_. If you want the Spurs 6th championship link tree with all the information for the book, the podcast, the audiobook, all of that stuff is available there.
And even the Follow the Spurs Dynasty, that link is there. You can't miss it, everybody. It literally says link tree right there in front of your face. You can't miss it. It's all there. Just out of curiosity, is this something also that Spurs fans can find on Amazon as well, or just through the link tree?
Yes, if you click on the link tree, you can find a link to the ebook on Amazon and Kindle. That is also available now.
Absolutely. He is Kyle Ledbetter. Follow him on Twitter @sportsdsd_, the author of the newest book revolving around your San Antonio Spurs, called The Spurs Dynasty. It is out right now as we speak. You want to go to his Twitter if you want to get yourself a copy of that book, or go back and listen to his the Follow the Spurs Dynasty with the Kawhi Leonard saga. Yeah, that's been a hit with fans, and it continues to be that. Kyle, we thank you for hopping on Locked On Spurs. I wish you luck. I hope you get a lot of sales, man, because this looks like going to be a very, very good addition, not only to your authorship, but just to Spurs fans that want everything silver and black. So we appreciate you, Kyle. But when we get back, we're going to go ahead and bring in our next guest. He is Roy Krishnan. He is the head coach of the Raptors Gaming of the NBA 2K League. So stick around for that. He's going to talk to you about the upcoming season and the offseason moves that the team made. But before we do that, I want to talk to you about Built Bar. Hey, it's the New Year's resolution, right? You want to get a healthier lifestyle, you got to try a Built Bar. It's a delicious treat, but you don't get all the fat and calories. They're so delicious. They're good for you. They're healthy, but they're actually tasty. Perfect for the New Year's resolution. What makes Built Bar so good? Well, for starters, they're covered in 100% real chocolate. That's right, real chocolate. Unbelievable flavors such as churro, peanut butter brownie, and chocolate almond. Look, I don't know how they do it. Kyle doesn't know how they do it, but they all do it. These bars taste like candy bars while only maintaining amazing, good macros. Check it out. 130 calories, 4 grams of sugar, and a whopping 17 grams of protein. You don't have to wait around for a box anymore. You can just go to your Walmart and Sam's Club right now. You can still go to Built.com to get yourself Built Bars. You want to go to Walmart today, go to the pharmacy section, grab yourself a box of Built Bars. They have a 4-bar box, cookies and cream, double chocolate, or coconut puff. Or just go to Sam's Club. Get a 13-bar box with hit flavors such as brownie batter and churro. You can thank me later. All right, and as promised at the beginning of the show, it is now time to catch up with the NBA 2K League, what is going on with the league, and much, much more. Today, we're going to put the spotlight on the Raptors GC's rookie, quote-unquote, head coach, Roy Krishnan. Roy, welcome to Locked On Spurs.
Hey, Jeff, always a pleasure, man. Thanks for having me.
No, thank you. But you know what? I got to give you kudos because you're more on top of me than I'm on top of you when it comes to Raptors stuff. So salute to you, man. You're always reaching out to me, letting me know what's going on with the team. So I figured might as well just bring you on now. Last week we had Nets GC's head coach talk about his journey and the season outlook for his team. So I figured, hey, let's do the same thing with Roy. So you down for that?
Of course, man. Yeah, always always reaching out. You do a great job covering us and the league. And saw some great articles over the years. So always like helping out the hard worker, and you've definitely been working hard covering this league. So yeah, much appreciated. Yeah, we'll get right into it.
All right, thank you very much. Make sure to follow Roy on Twitter at RoyKhris. That's RoyKhris. Roy, we teased you about being a rookie, head coach, but you do have a lot of experience, obviously, coming into the job. Tell us about your feelings. How are you feeling starting with Raptors GC, at the NBA 2K league level? What are you going to bring to this team?
Yeah, I think the Raptors have done a great job over the years of just putting together resources for their coaches to be able to go out and support their players in the best way possible on and off the court. And in terms of what I bring to the role, I think I'm the first guy the Raptors Uprising have really had in terms of someone from who comes from a variety of backgrounds. In terms of engineering and 2K, and also one of the first people that have come from the 2K community. So obviously, my journey started in 2021 with when I put together five players who are decently known at the time, but definitely not the exposure rating that they have today. 5 of those guys went on to play in the NBA 2K League, and 4 of those guys ended up being top 11 draft picks in the draft over the next 2 years. So that original Liquid Pro-Am team, we had Spam 1 of 1 at the point guard. He's now the 3rd overall pick for Lakers Gaming. Johnny Red at the shooting guard, 4th overall pick for Bucks Gaming. Zay at the small forward, who's a 6th overall pick for Mavs Gaming. King Peroxide, 2 years in the league, 3 years in the league with the Heat, the Bucks, and the Blazers. And lastly, Dietrich, who was the 11th overall pick for Heat Check Gaming last year. And so we had some, I've had some really talented players come through before they were quote unquote known. And we won the Amateur World Championship in 2021. I was able to parlay that success into an assistant coaching job with Mavs Gaming last year. And we had some trials and tribulations over there. We lost Zay, who was, our best player, was the front runner for Rookie of the Year last year. Lost him midway through his first season, and we were forced to adapt. We picked up a power forward named Jarsity, who took full advantage of the opportunity, switched positions for us. Went to his first tournament that we actually won. We won the ticket powered by AT&T. And after that, I was just able to make enough of a splash where people were able to say, hey, man, he's won with really good teams. He's gotten the most out of teams that maybe aren't so talented. But, we have been able to put the X's and O's together to achieve a shared and communal and satisfactory result. Right. And I'm just happy that the Raptors saw enough in me to be able to give me a chance to be a head coach and GM this year, and we've got a great partnerships team, a great support staff, great content team. It's a blessing as a coach and a GM to be able to come to an organization that's so willing to spend on its players, on its staff, on its environment, and that's honestly it's a blessing in the NBA 2K League. Not a lot of teams value this as highly as MLSE does, and to be able to come in and say, listen, we can offer you mental health resources, clinical support, and a personal trainer, a chef on game days, things that can improve the player's lifestyle outside of the game, things that can take care of our mental and emotional health. That's something I haven't taken for granted here in my first season with Raptors Uprising.
Yeah, and that's what we joke about it. You're a rookie in the traditional sense, being a head coach, but you do come with a lot of experience. Your assistant coaching time, and of course your time with Unified Pro-Am, and of course Liquid Pro-Am as well. Once again, we're talking with Roy Krishnan. He's the head coach and GM of Raptors GC of the NBA 2K League. We're talking about his journey and the season outlook for Raptors GC right here on Locked On Spurs. You definitely fit the bill. And you just rattled off what you just said right now, and understandable why Raptors GC decided to give you a go. How did you feel about that? Did you feel any pressure to not only wear the coaching hat, but we didn't get into this yet, the GM hat, that duality? How do you balance that?
Yeah, I mean, it's tough. I mean, I sometimes forget. You work so much in the NBA 2K League that you sometimes forget that, I'm 23 years old, 2 years removed from college. Where I got my degree in engineering. 2 years ago, I was an engineer. 18 months ago, I was an engineer. I was sitting at a desk at a startup, writing code for for biotech companies, consulting for biotech companies in America. And I always forget that because sometimes I have to take a moment and be like, wow, a year and a half ago, a little over 400 days ago, I'm working a desk job, and now I trade players for a living. And in terms of the balancing it comes with the territory, but in terms of is it hard? It was unbelievably hard. I think the best story I have is this season I traded Kenny Got Work, and Kenny has been a Raptors Uprising member since season 1. And for everyone out there, I was 17 years old when Kenny got drafted to the Raptors Uprising. I was a senior in high school, or junior in high school actually, and being able to trade him after everything he's done for our franchise is one of the toughest decisions I've ever had to make. And he's just, he's such a good guy, a genuine human being. He's been there for everything that we've gone through, both the ups and the downs of this franchise before I came in. And how to balance it is there is no balancing it. You just have to be as honest and transparent as you can be with these players so that, any decisions that you have to make, it doesn't take them by surprise. At the end of the day, we play a video game with virtual avatars, but when you trade people, you're changing the path of someone's life. Someone who's been here for 6 seasons in Toronto, has a house up here, and it's his second home, is now playing in Central Market in Washington D.C. for the first time ever. Right. And you just want to be honest and upfront with the players to say, listen, this is a hard process. It's designed to be a hard process. Bringing in a new GM and a new head coach isn't easy, right? Because when someone does that, when a team does that, it's because you didn't have a great year the year before. So the first thing I did is I came in, I sat down with each of the guys that we had on the team at the time that are no longer with us. They've moved on to other teams in trades that we made. And I was upfront and I told them, listen, we made $0 last year. There has to be some changes. And I don't know what those changes are, but as soon as I know and I have a better understanding of what direction we're moving in, you guys are going to be the first to know. You guys aren't going to hear through Twitter. You're not going to hear through someone else. If I make a deal, if I'm interested in making a deal, I'm going to put down that phone and call you guys and say, listen, this is what's on the table. I'm potentially thinking about taking it. So, in terms of navigating that water, just honest and upfront as you can be.
Yeah, well, hopefully, maybe in the future, you'll let me know so I can break some news. Just kidding with you, there, but all things considered, you're making a big splash. You're talking about the trades that you've made. You're coming in with the focus about having the team making money and bringing the Raptors GC back to be one of the dominant teams that they were. I remember I was just a few years ago; they were just dominating. Winning streaks and deep playoff runs, title runs, everything. The works. It was there. But you're right. You come in, you got to shake things up if you want the best for this team. And speaking of shaking things up, I mean, you look at this last draft that you had. You turned no first round picks into 3. Wow, how did you do that?
Yeah, I think I rely on my engineering background a lot. When times get tough and maybe the writing isn't on the wall, I have to say, how do I get creative, right? And we were in a tough spot last year where, transparently and candidly with you, Jeff, after a $0 season, people aren't willing to trade players for first round picks, right? When you make no money and everybody else in the league makes money, people don't think you have an X factor on your team that is worth the first round pick. So the way I went about it is let me strike while the iron is hot. I was able to, trade some of our guys for future assets. And then as teams started falling kind of, in love with their prospects around draft time, they start valuing present assets more than future assets. Mm-hmm. So, the first step was to become asset rich, right? That was step 1 of my plan. And I was able to, get some pretty good value back for the guys that we traded. We were able to trade Type for pick 26 in this year's draft, player Big Saint for picks 27 and a future first in this year's draft, and Kenny Got Work for picks 13 and Ball Like Seam. And just around that, I kind of realized, okay, now 27 and a future first, we can now turn around and trade that pick for pick 15. Teams are either future facing or present facing. And when our interests don't align, it's actually a good thing because, I'm looking to build a kind of a core, a nucleus out, whether it's this year or next year. And some teams are looking to do that this year as well. Some teams are looking to do that next year. So being able to get pretty strong value from our players was just making moves early to strike while the iron is hot. Before any other GMs kind of were making trades, we were right in the thick of it, moving guys, just because we knew, hey, you know what? People might say this is a not as great draft class as previous years, but as you get closer to the draft, there's always a couple of guys, right, that showcase well at the end, that teams are going to highly value. So that was our number one thing. And then our number two thing was we put an emphasis on not taking our point guard early. The 2K League, the point guard is such a premium position, right? The usage rate of guards is like 40 to 60%.
Right. It really is.
And everyone drafts their point guards early. And if you look at years past, guys like Ball Like Seam, who's now at the center position for us, and the Raptors draft pick last year, Fanta, they unfortunately just haven't worked out in the league. Is it their fault? Potentially not, but just that there's such a premium on the point guard position that the sixth best point guard in the draft happens to go 7th overall or 6th overall. So this year we kind of changed our thinking. We said, in one of the ways I try to play Moneyball here, let's take our point guard late, because if we can acquire top picks while everybody's taking their point guard, we can get the first pick at any other position on the board.
Mm-hmm.
So we took at pick 10, we were able to trade up to pick 10 using pick 15 and pick 13 and pick 27. So we traded all the way up to pick 10, and we got the number 2 shooting guard on this year's big board.
Awesome.
And then at pick 13, we got the number 1 ranked lock at this year's big board. And then luck is always a great environmental factor as well. And then we ended up at 26 picking up the 6th ranked point guard at this year's big board. So, we basically were able to go in, and by putting a premium on the things that people don't put a premium on early, we were able to create this like very holistic centered team where, maybe we don't need our point guard to go for 50 points anymore, because we've got such a supporting cast around him that it takes the pressure off of him to be, a kind of a more team-centric, team-focused player, because he's got the pieces to help make him successful, right? It's always been true that the number 1 point guard with the number 7 lock and the number 8 shooting guard maybe go out and win a championship. We're trying to change that narrative. We put a premium on other positions to be able to come in and simplify the point guard's job. So now maybe the 6th ranked point guard in the draft looks like the 2nd ranked point guard in the draft because he's got the help that he needs, right? So that was kind of our thinking for this year's draft.
Yeah, it definitely sounds like you have a plan set, not only for the long term, but for the short term in bringing Raptors Uprising back to prominence. Now, speaking of the the immediate short term, or kind of sort of the long term, you got the season. It's right around the corner. I know you're getting ready for that. You just had to finish with the draft. You're getting your team ready. They're practicing already. What is the outlook? What do you see for Raptors Uprising for the new season?
So, in terms of, we've been scrimmaging other teams. We've been going through what we call boot camp, which is, for anyone who doesn't know, the NBA 2K League is played on a specialty version of the game. We play on this thing called League Build that is custom built for our players and staff to be able to basically give you a more fan-friendly experience. And what that means is that we put these guys on their retail builds, right? We call it retail. The regular NBA 2K23 builds, the games will be 200 to 200. So we play on a slightly bigger court, so it promotes a little bit more scoring. But we also have no adrenaline boosts, which the regular game does.
Right.
And it's just done so in a way that it makes it a little bit more similar to basketball, but it also promotes, scoring. So that being said, we have a month. Our boot camp is a month, and we're in it right now. And the outlook is extremely strong. And I think the biggest points of my happiness come from people in the organization, right? And the Raptors had a tough season 4. They had a really tough season 5. And, you come in, you hear the stories just around the people you go to work with every single day. I mean, being new, I tell people, and rightly so, I've never really lost in the 2K League. I had a pretty good year last year. And the year before that, like Liquid Pro-Am won the world championship. And I've never had a losing season before. So I don't know what that really feels like. But just the energy in the room, from what I've told, is there's an expectation to win for the first time in 3 years.
And it sounds like you embrace that expectation. I've been following, as mentioned to you, the league for years now, and I do remember that run where the Raptors GC was just dominating, and I'm looking forward to seeing that back for your team, your club, the franchise, and you running as head coach and GM. It sounds like the Raptors GC found themselves the right person for both jobs. You embrace it. You have the energy. You definitely have a vision, and we're looking forward to seeing what Raptors GC has in store for the new season. Roy, we're running out of time here, and I don't want to keep you too long. I know you're a busy man, but how can fans tune in? How can fans check up on you, Raptors GC? What's going on with you guys?
Yeah, so feel free to reach out. So we have our 2K fan club. We give away a ton of gear, ton of merch, ton of very cool stuff that our partners let us give away, like our LG Ultra Gear monitors, PS5s, our custom Air Force Ones by DKI Customs. We give away a ton of cool stuff, and that's all can be found at Raptors GC on Twitter and Instagram. You'll see a little link in there to join our 6x2K fan club. And yeah, come check us out on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook. Just Google Raptors Uprising. All our stuff will pop up. There's definitely a very, very strong culture in place this season. And like I said, there's just an expectation to win this year. The buzz we have in the locker room, the buzz we have in the front office, we can't wait for the season to start. We know that, when push comes to shove, we're going to be one of the top teams in the 2K League this season. We are unbelievably excited for it, man. The energy is contagious, and we love to share that with our fans. So,
all right, Ray, I got to ask you, what does this mean? The coach with all the computers. What does that mean on your Twitter profile?
So yeah, last year I kind of made a shock in the NBA 2K League where I would go to the stage with like 3 computers, and everyone was like, "What is this guy doing? What is this weird guy with the computers doing?" And it was just I was basically running like these models to be able to like forecast what the other team.
I see what you got there. Yeah, I see. You're always thinking ahead, Roy. Always thinking ahead.
Always got to be thinking ahead, man. Otherwise, you're thinking behind. So try some stuff out.
By the way, you brought up Moneyball earlier. You're saying like that's kind of like your plan of attack. Who knows? Maybe Brad Pitt will play you in the Raptors GC Moneyball version of you guys. What about that?
Gotta win some games first, and then afterwards, I'd love to sign that contract deal.
He is Roy Krishnan. Make sure to follow him on Twitter at Roy Chris, KHRIS. And once again, he is the head coach and GM of Raptors GC. Make sure to follow Raptors GC, as he said, at Raptors GC on Twitter. And as mentioned, the league is right around the corner. New season is coming up fast. So for Roy Krishnan, I am Jeff Garcia. We're going to put a lock on this episode of Locked On Spurs.
Thank you.